Hey, AP students, time to talk a little bit about chapters 4, 5, and 6 in The Awakening by Kate Chopin. Again, this is the COVID-19 inspired lecture series that you get to check out on Finglish 101. If you're looking at this, then you found it. Good for you. Otherwise, you're by yourself, then oh well. Okay. So in chapters 1, 2, and 3 in The Awakening, right, we met the protagonist, Edna Pontellier, right? She's a mid-20s lady vacationing on an island south of New Orleans, Louisiana. Pretty well-to-do lady. Her husband and herself have a couple of kids. And so, so far we've sort of been introduced to the setting, have the feel of a vacationing kind of setting. But we've also noticed that Edna is maybe a little bit sad, right? A little bit depressed. And that's something, of course, that we have to look out for moving on with this piece. If you look at beginning of chapter 4 on page 7 here, I just want to read this moment, because, of course, we ended chapter 3 with Edna, crying to herself and very sad. And then we see Mr. Pontellier's thoughts here. It would have been a difficult matter for Mr. Pontellier to define to his own satisfaction or anyone else's wherein his wife failed in her duty toward their children. It was something which he felt rather than perceived, and he never voiced the feeling without subsequent regret or ample atonement. Right? Yeah, very subtle there, but you get the sense that Mr. Pontellier is kind of disappointed in his wife because of her lack of skill with children. And actually, chapter 4 is really all about that. Right? We learn a really interesting new term on the top of page 8 that's called mother woman. Right? And this chapter is really about how Edna compares herself to this lady who she thinks is the perfect mother woman, Adele Ratignolle. Right? And Adele is this lady who seems to just be the perfect mother. She's beautiful. She has a kid every couple of years. She seems incredibly infatuated with having children and producing for them. And in this chapter, Edna and Adele are sort of sitting together. Adele's teaching Edna how to sew these winter clothing for the kids. And, Edna can't, she's pretending really hard to care about all this, but she really doesn't. The other thing in this chapter that you're noticing on page 9 here is this sort of this feeling of Edna as sort of out of place amongst these people, the Creole people. Right, she was born in Mississippi in a very conservative Southern family, and some of the things these folks talk about are just shocking, right? And they're very open with all sorts of issues. If you look at the bottom of page 9 there, Adele talks very openly, to all sorts of people, including men, about giving birth. Right, something that you wouldn't even mention in polite Victorian society in southern Mississippi. So you look out for those ideas in this chapter where Edna's feeling really out of place amongst these people who are very open about their place. Going into chapter 5, right, we see Edna. One of the things you're probably getting out of this is the fact that Edna doesn't do anything with her children. She's got a nurse who, does all the child rearing stuff. So it's another interesting place to look at in this piece. This idea of what is the purpose of a woman who's supposed to be this mother woman, but you don't actually do the mothering. You hire someone to do that, right? And so this Edna's sense of identity here is tied up with her children, who are sort of estranged from her because in her society she's not supposed to actually raise the kids. And that, of course, puts her sort of meaning into question, and that might be something that we look at. The other thing that happens in chapter 5 is Edna gives a shot at painting, right? And tries to capture a portrait of Madame Ratignolle. Doesn't go so well. She ends up destroying the painting, and so on. Finally, going into chapter 6. Very short chapter, less than a page on page 13. Right? There's a nice paragraph I'd like you to focus on, and then think about the Gulf, right? This open mass of water. In short, Mrs. Pontellier was beginning to realize her position in the universe as a human being, and to recognize her relations as an individual to the world within and around her. This may seem like a ponderous weight of wisdom to descend upon the soul of a young woman of 28, perhaps more wisdom than the Holy Ghost is usually pleased to vouchsafe to any woman. Right. So, right here we have Chopin, telling us there's an awakening going on. Edna's starting to awaken to her position in the world, and her position in the world is sort of in limbo. She doesn't really, she's trying to find herself, right? And you'd think that, she's 28 years old, she's married, she has a couple of kids, you'd think that she would have found herself by now. But that doesn't seem to be enough. And that's what we'd like you to focus on moving forward, and also be thinking about how this compares to Janie's travails in Their Eyes Were Watching God, which we'll check up on in just a minute. Okay? Thank you. Hope you're enjoying your sequestration at home and finding stuff to do. I hope some of that stuff is English. Have a good one, guys.